Like most people in today's age, I have played an extensive amount of video games. One may say a troublesome amount of video games. Video games are a part of my life, and I can still remember the first time I played a video game, and that video game was Halo 2. And I remember I asked my brother if I could play it, and he was like, no. And then I cried and went to my mom. And because I was the youngest and I always get what I want, my mom was all like, let him play the game. And I was like, yes. And my brother was like, why? And my mom was all like, just let him. And I was like, yeah, what she said. And my brother was like, fine. So then he put the controller in my hand, and even though the controller was like literally the size of my head, because like the old Xbox controllers were so big, everything felt right. It was amazing. It was more for my child mind to comprehend. And I have played so much Halo 2, I can't even like tell you how many times I've played the campaign. I literally know the campaign like the back of my hand. I could reverse the entire campaign right now. I've played it so many times, and god damn it, it's still so good. And the reason why it was so good to my little tiny childlike head is because I got to shoot elites in the face and throw plasma grenades at jackals, and I got to melee grunts and then hit like the back shell of the grunt off, or I don't know what that was. It's some sort of helmet thing, some sort of like Ninja Turtle, like turtle armor thing. The point was, it made you feel like you were in an action movie, and it was so cool to my like 8-year-old mind that I thought it was the greatest thing ever, and I still do. And then years later, I got an Xbox 360, and then the first game I got with that Xbox 360 was Halo 3, which I've played a multitude of times as well. And I think Halo 3 is a better game than Halo 2 because it's just like Halo 2 on steroids, okay? They bring back the assault rifle. The multiplayer is probably better. You have brutes. The soundtrack is just as good. I mean, it's just a great game. And I remember when they were saying, hey, we're coming out with Halo 4. I was like, what? This is the greatest news I've ever heard of in my life. And I waited and waited and waited and waited. And then Halo 4 came out. Like, it's the biggest disappointment I've ever played or heard or saw or smelled or tasted. It was just bland. And that's the best way to describe it. Everything that made the original Halo game so good, the story, the multiplayer, the soundtrack, and even Forge, they all were just bland. The storyline of Halo 2 and Halo 3 is so epic because you're literally saving the human race and saving Earth. That's how amazing it is. And then in Halo 4, you know what happens? You're just trying to save Cortana because she's like getting old. Cortana, you're running on Windows 95 here, okay? You're running on Windows XP. It's time to upgrade to Windows 10. Maybe not Windows 10 because Windows 10 kind of sucks. Maybe just stick to that Windows 8, 9, but Windows 95 and Windows XP, it's just not going to cut it anymore, Cortana. I just can't play this. Minesweeper doesn't even run anymore. How am I supposed to play Minesweeper? It doesn't even run on Windows 95. It's too slow. You see the problem? Okay? Sometimes people just gotta die. Cortana, you just gotta go. And Chief is just like whining the whole time. He's just like, I need to save Cortana. I need to save Cortana. Like, shut the fuck up. You're just in love with a computer. Okay? You gotta get over it. It's ridiculous. And by the way, okay, the main bad guy of the whole thing is this Promethean dude whose name I don't even know because it doesn't really even matter. But you don't really see him until like 3/4 of the way into the story. And they just bring up, they're like, Captain Keyes is all like, Chief, you gotta come back and save the world because this Promethean suit is gonna blow it up. And you're like, what? Oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And then you go and blow him up. And it's not a good boss fight. You know, you're just clicking buttons. That's it. It's not even that good. And by the way, let me go back to Chief for a moment. In the first 3 Halo games, Chief doesn't really speak that much. And that's what makes him so badass, okay? When he speaks, you listen and you care about what he says because, oh, Hold it. Chief is talking, alright? The big cheese is talking. Everyone listen up. But in Halo 4, every second it's whining. It's like, Cortana, I'm gonna save you. I'm gonna save you, Cortana. You just gotta get to Dr. Halsey. Like, Dr. Halsey is not even close to characters like Sergeant Johnson. Sergeant Johnson is this cool, charismatic character. Dr. Halsey is just like, she's just like this depressed, like, Pastor Prime PhD doctor who's like, yeah, I created the Spartans, so I'm pretty cool. Like, get out of here. And then, if they couldn't ruin Halo, like, enough, they made Halo 5. And you wanna know why they made Halo 5? Because they wanted to make money. And they made Halo 5, and I kid you not, I recently went back to play Halo 5 because I was like, well, if I'm going to talk about Halo, I might as well go back and play other games. Halfway into Halo 5, I like pause the game and I'm like, wait a minute, I've played this game before. And then I go back and I like check and I find out I played the story before on EA Early Access. I played the game. And I don't even remember. I didn't even remember a single thing about Halo 5. Like, that's how bad and forgettable the story was, is I completely forgot about the game. Like, completely forgot. Like, I realized halfway into the game, I was like, oh my god, wait, I've played this game before. That's how bad they are at storytelling over at 343 Industries. Like, Jesus Christ. The story is just bland. Like, everything in Halo 4 and Halo 5 is just like stuff that we've already seen before. Okay, saving the human race, saving the world, that was Halo 2. That was Halo 3. Change it up. You know, Reach, like, Halo Reach, I thought the story was so good because it was different. And the ending is, like, so different. Like, everyone dies. That's something different and creative, and you're not just saving the world. And you actually care about the characters because they're actually charismatic, and they matter. Like, you feel like they actually matter because they actually, like, have character development. I know, it's crazy. Like, you actually get to know their backgrounds, so you actually care about them when they die. In Halo 5, when they have that squad of yahoos, that squad of hooligans who are trying to chase down Chief, you don't care about them because there's no character development for them. They're just like, yeah, these guys are here and they're trying to get Chief. Why? Who cares? Where are they from? That doesn't really matter. Like, it's just, how am I supposed to care about your characters if you're, like, not doing anything? And that's the greatest crime of these single-player games for Halo 4 and Halo 5. They made me not care. I didn't care about Chief or Cortana or about any of it because it didn't feel like it mattered. And that's the big difference between good single-player games and bad single-player games. Good single-player games make you care about the story, make you care about the characters, make you care about the world. But in Halo 4 and Halo 5, you just don't feel that. Now, I don't really know if there's a good way to put this. Like, there's not a great answer to why a game makes you feel the way they do. I think the main reason why is just because it's interesting. Because it's something we haven't seen before. And once you get to Halo 4 and Halo 5, it's like, yeah, we've seen this. And then we get to the multiplayer, which I played Halo 4 and Halo 5. I've played their multiplayer extensively. And I'll tell you what Halo 4 and Halo 5's multiplayer is. It's just Call of Duty with more futuristic guns. That's all it is. Halo 2 and Halo 3's multiplayer was a lot different than Battlefield and Call of Duty. And that's what was good about it. It was a different experience than the modern first-person shooter multiplayer that we were experiencing. There were no loadouts, there were no kill streaks, there was no sprinting. There was this sense of, like, equality among the players. And what I mean by that is, when you died, and when you got killed by someone, it's because they were a better player. Okay, it wasn't because they had all these crazy guns that you get from loot boxes and, you know, from just sprinting around the map just shooting everybody. Like, it was more strategic. It was a different multiplayer experience. It's kind of like Counter-Strike, just not as tactical. But it was different. And what did they do with Halo 4 and Halo 5? They threw all of that out the window and they were like, let's just make a Call of Duty and Battlefield ripoff. Because that's what the multiplayer is. You just run around killing people. You have loadouts, you have sprinting, you have kill streaks. So, really, all of it was just they just got rid of, which really pissed me off because I don't want to see Halo fall down to Call of Duty and to Battlefield, because Halo meant something to me, and that's what I'm getting at here. The reason why I care about the games, like just as games, is because, you know, the Halo franchise was, you know, it was the first video games that I played, and they meant something to me. And I'll be honest, the end of Halo 3, I cried when I was a kid because, you know, I was sad about it. Like, I felt like those people were real. And then they just ran it into the ground. Like, 343 Industries just ran all of it into the ground. They got rid of Forge. They ruined single player. It's so disappointing when your favorite gaming franchise gets ruined. And it's just unfortunate that Halo ended up the way it did. Bungie's Halo had this riveting story with a universe that you cared about and that mattered, with characters that, you know, you related with, that you wanted to help and wanted to see succeed. You had a multiplayer that was strategic, that was fun to play, and, you know, even when you lost, you recognized that it was because someone, you know, was a better player and had, you know, put more hours into it. And there was this epic soundtrack that I think is among the great soundtracks in video games and maybe pieces of media in general. You could create, you know, your own maps with Forge, and there was this creativeness behind it. 343 just got rid of all that, and they just watered it down to this cash grab. And that's the sad part. I mean, Halo is just a cash grab.